Hello lovelies, welcome back to our bizarre and unusual world. It has been a hot minute, but I'm so happy to be back with a new episode and a new topic. Of course, this series is all about strange or weird things, or better yet, the bizarre and unusual. So today we are going to be covering the Lady of Crescent Lake. Usual for this series, I cover the who, what, when, where, why, and how of the Lady of Crescent Lake, or the Lady of the Lake. Let's start with the where. Where does this case take place? As many of you have probably guessed, it takes place in Crescent Lake, and you can find that particular lake in the Olympic National Park in Washington. This location is about 30 or so minutes from the popular city of Port Angeles. This lake is described as a beautiful sight with crystal clear water with nearby snowy peaks. Roughly, this lake is about 600 feet deep and can in fact be quite cold. Now for the what. What makes this case so bizarre and unusual? On July 6th, 1940, a man named Lewis Ralph and his brother were at this Crescent Lake simply fishing. Unfortunately, their day took a dark turn when they noticed something floating near the shore of the lake. When the two investigated, they found the body of a strangled woman. She was wearing a green dress and wrapped in gray striped blankets. This woman would actually be the first body to ever be discovered in this lake, so she quickly got the name Lady of the Lake or Lady of Lake Crescent. This spooky title also offers a very mysterious and ghost legend to the mix of this area, especially with its connection to the lake. Notes about this particular body of water being a cold, deep lake that had a reputation for never giving up its dead. Until, of course, this day. This woman was white as marble and oddly pretty well preserved. Upon first look, they guessed that she was about in her 30s. Upon further inspection, they noted that she had saponified. Now, if you haven't heard that term before, let me explain. Saponified, which in short terms is where the fat in your body turns to a soap-like substance. The cold water halted her decomposition, and the salts in the water penetrated her fatty tissues. Which is kind of an odd image for a body to have a soap-like texture. One of the doctors that examined her body said, "I've never seen a corpse just like this one before. The flesh is hard and almost waxy." The autopsy concluded this woman had clearly been beaten and strangled, as the marks on her body were clearly still visible. They also estimated that her body had been in the lake for roughly 3 years, which is a long time considering how her body was preserved and still in this waxy soap-like state. However, her face was harder to identify because of her time spent in the water, and some of her facial features weren't as apparent, same with her fingertips. This woman was tied up with a rope, and they seemed to be attached to some rocks that were an attempt to weigh her down when she was thrown into the lake. However, the ropes eventually fell apart, and the saponification of her body made her extremely light, meaning her body was easily able to float to the surface of the lake and kind of just wait to be discovered along the shore of Crescent Lake. Then, of course, became the task of trying to figure out who this woman was. At the start of this investigation, they believed that the Lady of the Lake was actually a missing Chicago woman. She had been in the area in 1939 and had gone missing. She was around the same age, the looks could be similar, and she was even dressed similar to how this missing woman had been last seen. But upon further inspection, the missing Chicago woman had damage to her spinal cord, and Lady of the Lake, the body that was discovered, did not have these injuries, so they determined it was not the missing Chicago woman. So how was the Lady of Crescent Lake, Lady of the Lake, discovered? How was her identity figured out? Well, it would take investigators around 14 months to finally discover who this woman was. As I had said, the state of her fingertips was pretty much impossible to get a print off of, so it came down to dentistry. So the Lady of the Lake had a very specific 6-tooth bridge made of beaten gold. Pictures of this particular bridge were sent out to more than 5,000 dentists across the United States, hoping that someone would not only recognize their work, but hopefully the patient as well. A dentist from South Dakota immediately recognized the bridge and was able to identify who this woman was. So who was the mystery lady of the lake? She was identified as Hallie Illingworth. She was 38 years old and had actually been a waitress at the Lake Crescent Tavern. Hallie was born January 9th, 1901 to a farm couple in Kentucky. Hallie moved around a lot, kind of in search of a better life or for some place that she felt like she fit in. She found her way to Lake Crescent Tavern for work, and this is actually where she met her third husband, Monty Illingworth. Hallie was last seen December 22nd, 1937. After work, she had returned home to her apartment to wait for her husband. He had been a couple towns away at a party. So why? Why was Hallie killed? Honestly, this case wasn't too difficult once they were able to identify her body. Her husband, Monty, a beer truck driver, and also known as a ladies' man, was kind of known as a nasty drunk. It was pretty well known that he was very abusive towards Hallie and just overall wasn't the best guy. After Hallie's disappearance, her husband claimed that she had run off with another man, and he was very devastated by this, but she left him, so what could he do? Almost immediately after identifying her body, the investigation announced that Monty was their #1 suspect and they were working on tracking him down. They would find him in Long Beach, California with his new girlfriend, who was suspected to be his girlfriend even back when he was married to Hallie. According to Monty, he had last seen Hallie around Christmas 1937. The courts actually allowed him a divorce because she had been missing for so many years. The pair had married in Seattle, June of 1936. Those around them said that the couple fought often over alcohol or parties and affairs. There was also police reports when times they had to come and break up their fights, and Hallie would show up to work visibly injured with bruises and scrapes and so on. So it was safe to say that there were a lot of different reasons and witnesses that pointed the finger towards her husband, Monty. The trial began on February 21st, 1942, and was such a big deal in the area, it actually competed with World War II news from the front lines. So it was kind of a big deal in that Washington area. During the trial, Monty's story kind of shifted. Instead of seeing her around Christmas, it changed to the last time he had seen her was December 22nd, the day that she went missing. He had come home, they had fought, and then he headed back out to drink. And when he came back to the apartment, she was nowhere to be found, and she never came home. He also claimed that the body that they discovered, the Lady of the Lake, couldn't be his wife because he was sure she was out living her life with another man. When the questions of the abuse in the marriage, Monty said, "I struck Hallie, she also struck me. I never beat her up. I did not kill Hallie." When asked why Monty hated Hallie so much, he said he didn't hate her, but he didn't have any explanation on why he would beat her up so badly. While we will never truly know what exactly happened that night, the prosecution suspect that the pair went home, they had a fight as they usually do, and the abuse went too far, and he beat and strangled his wife around 3 to 6 a.m. Then he went ahead and loaded up her body in the trunk of his car and drove up to Lake Crescent. It's suggested that Monty used one of the rowboats to get out into the middle of the lake before tying her up in rope and the rocks and dropping her into the freezing water. Now, back then, there was a lot of speculation that Monty did not work alone in the disposal of the body, but nothing ever came of the investigation or anybody that could have helped him, but there was a lot of talk around town. They ended up sealing his conviction by the type of rope that he wrapped around her body. His employer was able to identify the rope that Monty had borrowed from him and never returned this rope. Also, there was more of this rope at Lake Crescent, and they matched the fibers to it, and it matched the rope that Hallie was tied up in. Monty was convicted of second-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison. However, after only 9 years, they paroled him. Kind of ridiculous. He returned to California, where he lived out the rest of his life. He died in 1975. I personally don't feel like that was enough justice for Hallie, but I also did want to read a little bit about this lake, kind of the history and the lore surrounding it. The lake is no stranger to bloody stories. According to the legend, the Klallam and Quileute tribes fought a bloody battle beneath Mount Storm King. The mountain became angry, broke off a chunk of rock from his peak, and threw it into the valley over the battlefield. The rock killed the warriors and dammed the river, creating Crescent Lake. Generations of Native Americans would not go near the lake because of this legend. It was said that Crescent Lake never gave up its dead until the Lady of the Lake surfaced in 1940. As always, thank you so much for watching this episode. I'm curious, had you ever heard of this particular story? There's something spooky about the Lady of the Lake type legend and water surfaces and all of that. I am really happy that they were able to solve her case, although I don't think he spent enough time in prison for murdering his wife. That's just my opinion, but I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye guys.